We begin with breaking news on the Air Canada dispute. The union representing 10,500 flight attendants is remaining defiant in the face of an order to return to work today. CUPE says it plans to challenge a directive from the Canada Industrial Relations Board, and the workers won't be resuming their duties at 2 p.m. Eastern, meaning they will remain on strike. This is video of some of those flight attendants picketing at Toronto's Pearson International Airport this morning. Similar protests are either taking place now or planned in Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver. The flight attendants walked off the job early yesterday after long-running contract talks broke down. Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu later referred the dispute to binding arbitration, pointing to the potentially huge economic consequences. CBC's Linda Ward is at Canada's busiest airport. Of course, that's Toronto Pearson International. That's where the union demonstrating, as we can see behind you, Linda. You've been speaking to the members all morning. They've all been expressing defiance to that return to work order. Specifically, what are they saying about that?
Well, Marianne, an especially pumped up crowd right now with this rally still going on behind me. And the chants of this crowd, hell no, we won't go. And that is referring to that back to work order. They had been told that they were needed back on the job at 2 o'clock this afternoon. That's Eastern time. They're saying they are not going to do that. They are going to defy this order. This crowd has been joined by other unions, not just CUPE, Unifor. We've got the Machinist Union here. We've seen Postal Workers Unions here. The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario is here. So this crowd is growing and has blocked off this entire lane here at the departures area at Pearson Airport as they continue to chant and ask the government ask Air Canada for what they say is a fair contract. Now, 10,517 flight attendants in total across the country will not be going back on the job, according to the union, at 2 o'clock today. The Canada Industrial Relations Board had ordered them at that point to resume their duties, so they would be in defiance of that order. Wesley Lasowski is the president of the Air Canada component of CUPE, and here's what he said to the crowd just a short time ago here at this rally.
To all 10,517 flight attendants, each and every supporter, each and every union president that's here working for Air Canada, we will remain strong. We will not back down. Now is not the time, and we will move forward the way we choose to move forward.
So resolve here, resolve from everyone in this crowd. We have reached out to Air Canada to see what their response is, and we are awaiting a response to our request for comment from them. As well, we have reached out to Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu, who invoked Section 107 and ordered this binding arbitration in the first place. We only got the same statement that was sent out yesterday, indicating the importance, according to the minister, of bringing in this arbitrator to put an end to this dispute, saying that the impact on Canadians was far too great.
For passengers, though, Linda, now there may be even more confusion, because for a moment at the beginning with this breaking news, it seemed there was a glimmer of hope for those hearing that operations were resuming, and now we're hearing this defiance from the union. And you've been talking to travelers there at the airport. What are they saying as things continue to change throughout the day?
But while this rally is going on out here inside of this terminal, there are people lying all over the floor. They don't know where they're supposed to be going. They don't know when they're going to be able to get on a plane to leave Pearson Airport. Some of them have been here for days, and then they were given the news by Air Canada that flights were expected to resume tonight. That news, of course, was contingent on the fact that flight attendants were supposed to be back on the job today. So that is now up in the air. We're not sure exactly what that means for those passengers, and they're not able to get any answers either. Here's one man I spoke with who's been sleeping on the floor at Pearson since Friday.
I have a child here, so I'm just hoping and praying something happens. I tried without flight options. I got a mail that there's a phone number to call. I tried for like forever, never went through.
His younger brother is where?
In Winnipeg.
And you're trying to get back for your son's birthday.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
With him.
So again, just no answers for people. And with this news now, this uncertainty becomes even more uncertain, Marianne.
And I know you'll be there at the airport throughout the morning. Linda, we'll check in with you as things continue to develop today. Thanks so much. That's the CBC's Linda Ward. And for his perspective on these developments, let's bring in Stephen Tufts. He's an associate professor of labor geography at York University. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Good morning.
Okay, as we heard Linda just saying, there's a lot of confusion now. So let's talk about this report that the union is saying it is going to defy the back to work order and remain on strike beyond those orders to return to work today. What do you make of that?
Well, I think this is the chickens coming home to roost. Air Canada has taken, and other employers, federally regulated as well, have really taken advantage of trying to pressure governments and governments conceding to their demand to order people back to work with this section of the Canada Labour Code, Section 107. And it's deemed unfair by workers. It's seen as an infringement on the rights to bargain freely. And when you have a strike mandate vote of 99.7% of flight attendants, that's an indicator that flight attendants want to make significant gains in this round of bargaining, and they want an agreement that they bargain, not that's imposed on them through a binding arbitration process, which will undoubtedly fall far short of what they're demanding currently at the table.
Can the union legally defy that back to work order?
Well, this is where things get really messy. There have been historically in Canada unions defying back to work orders. More recently, education workers under CUPE in Ontario. And historically, if we go back even further, 1980s, Grace Hartman, president of CUPE, was jailed for 45 days when health workers refused to go back to work in Ontario. So there are precedents for this. And this is a case where what happens when governments who are seen to take an unfair path to get collective bargain, to influence collective bargaining in the sector, when workers just say enough is enough and they don't show up to work. So this means that there's even more uncertainty in the sector, even more disruption, and probably even more chaos for the next few days.
Definitely not what travelers want to hear, especially if they're wondering what's going to happen with their flights and future travel. For Air Canada, though, what can they do to ensure that the workers do go back and that flights can resume if that's what the order is?
Well, if Air Canada can actually bargain like an employer does in most private sector parts of the economy. Air Canada has become dependent upon government help to solve its labor relations issues. It tried to get the government to intervene with pilots last year. The government didn't in that case because they were in an election cycle. Carney is a different prime minister. He's not facing a looming election, so they have used Section 107 in this case. And I think Air Canada has to learn to not call mommy and daddy every time they reach an impasse at the bargaining table. They have to actually sit down and get a deal done with their workers. And their dependence on government to invoke Section 107 or other types of back to work legislation and force things to binding arbitration obviously are running up against a wall.
I want to ask you about what CUPE is saying. They're saying that the chair of the Canadian Industrial Relations Board is a former Air Canada counsel and has asked her to recuse herself from the proceedings because of her previous relationship with the airline. Your take on this conflict of interest?
Yeah, this is something that just shows you again how this system is stacked against workers and does favor employers. Maurice Tremblay was a counsel for Air Canada for a number of years before she was appointed to the CIRB. And I think that is a conflict of interest. If you were working for an employer and then also you're responsible for carrying out directives of the government, which the union seems unfair, I don't understand how that could not be a conflict of interest. But we'll see how that plays out because right now the government doesn't seem to take that seriously.
We know the government has used back to work legislation before intervening in labor disputes, ports, post offices. We saw that happen recently, even with the rails. What are you watching for in the next few days or even in the next few hours? Things are changing. And is it likely that this dispute will be resolved?
I'm looking for right now in the immediate next 24, 48 hours. I'm going to be interesting to see how many flight attendants simply don't show up to work. Air Canada themselves reported late last week that 300 workers had refused or called in sick prior to the strike even beginning, and that caused delays in flights. So if that's the case, these flight attendants are adamant they want a fair deal this time, and if they can get that kind of labor militancy and solidarity is expressed with other labor unions, will other labor unions start working to support flight attendants? This could be a very interesting week in aviation industry.
I know you'll be watching. We're watching as well. Stephen Tufts, thanks so much for your time and for your insight this morning.
Thank you.